Now that we have a page where we've added divs for header, footer, a container, a wrapper, let's go and add some CSS so we can actually see these elements and start building the look of our website. Right, to do that, I'm going to go back into my editor. Here's my CSS, and I'm going to just be typing things here. I could do this in Firebug. Since the elements are there, I could start adding styles. But let's just start doing this in the text editor to create the basic structure. Now, first of all, we know that there's a wrapper, okay, and a container. And the container has a header and a footer. So let's go ahead and take a look at that part of it. So just to see it, I'm going to, first of all, I have a div with the ID wrapper. So I'm just going to specify that the thing with the ID wrapper I am going to give a background color to, partly so you can identify it when we see it. Background color, and we can change this later, but so we can see it. Now, whenever you change or set a background color, you should also specify a text color, just in case this element inherited a text color that would basically be invisible on this new background. So I am going to specify I want white text on this gray, and that will at least be visible. I don't actually plan on putting any text on the wrapper only, but things inside the wrapper will inherit this, and that might prove important. So within the wrapper, we had something called the container. All right, so when I was trying this out before, I accidentally made this the content div with interesting results, which you can play around with. Now, I want a different background color for this, but because I'm not typing very well today, I'm just going to copy, paste, give this a white background so we can tell what's the container and what's the wrapper. They'll have different backgrounds. And since this has a background color of white, I'm going to make the text black here so that I can see any text I put in there. Otherwise, it would show up as white because it's inside of this one. Now, there's the header. And there's the footer. The other thing we want to do with the container is make it so that it is centered on the page. Now, to do that, you have to give it a fixed width. We're mostly going to be working with fixed width layouts. Most of your WordPress layouts are fixed width. It's easier. You can actually design things more carefully, specifically if the width of your page isn't changing all the time. It's become much more popular. Designers used to think you had to do flexible width, otherwise you weren't a good designer. It just turns out it's actually impossible to have good designs that constantly change. Some are better than others. So I'm going to use a width here for the container of 960 pixels. You'll see that this is a very common, almost standard width for a lot of your themes in WordPress. So I'm going to go ahead and select that here, since that's the direction we're going. And now that we have a fixed width, we know how wide it is, and so we can have it centered on the page. Centering, when I was first learning CSS, it took me days to find a reference that said the right way to do this. You specify a margin. Now the top margin and bottom margin we aren't going to change, but we're going to set the margin for the sides to auto. This tells the browser to change the margins around our container so that it's perfectly centered. And that's all there is to it. All right, so that we can see the header, let's also copy and paste some things in here. Background color. Now, I don't want this to be gray. I'm going to pick one of my colors that I'm already working with. I think the blue I had on the H2 might serve us here. So I'm going to go up here, and so for the header, I want the background color to be that blue, and we'll see what it is. And the white should show up well against that. And I think I'll do the same thing for the footer. Well, before I do that, I'm going to specify a height for the header. We don't have any content in there right now, but I want to specify a height for it. I'm going to put in 200 pixels for that. That'll allow us to see it before we get content in there. Now I'm going to copy all of that and put it in the footer because I want to use the same basic style for the footer, so the footer won't be as big. All right, so that's probably enough to take a look at here. So we have a wrapper with a gray background, then a container. Now the container was supposed to have a different background and a contrasting font color. I don't know what I was thinking about before. Trying to confuse you, I think. Then we have the header with the blue background, white text, height of 200, blue background, white text, height of 100. I'm going to save this, go back in the browser, reload. Here's our web page. We have a blue header, a blue footer. Now, our recipe, remember, I had a width of 600 on it, and it's inside this container, which is 960. So we have some extra space here that we'll have to figure out what we want to do with. There'd be room for a sidebar or extra navigation to other recipes, perhaps. And if I resize this, we see the behavior we're looking for. When we get out to 960 pixels, then we start seeing the wrapper's background showing up behind it. And we can put, a nice color back there, graphics eventually. Nice things to spruce it up. All right, so now that we have the basic structure I want, it's time to start adding some more information to it. We want to look at what information to put in the heading, what to put in the footer, and we're going to need some navigation for this website.